Today's video is all about mindfulness and mindlessness and how those two things can be a really important part of any project that you're making. If you only take away one message from today's video, I hope it is the message that creating is good for you, because I really do believe that. I also believe we should try to prioritize creating a bit more in our lives. But that is easier said than done. We tend to think other things are more important, but I actually think creating is integral to our well-being. This is my Happy Memories quilt. I've been working on this quilt for a couple of years now, and it is a project that I actually don't want to finish because I'm enjoying it so much. I haven't worked on it for a while, so I thought I would revisit it today, show you some things from the past and create some new things for it as well. This quilt has taught me a lot. It has taught me what brings me joy in making, and that is a variety of techniques to keep the interest. So some embroidery, some hand sewing, some hand quilting, applique, a range of different techniques. But it's also taught me about being mindful and being mindless and what those two things actually mean. And I've realised that both of those things are an integral part of any project for me. I need to be mindful in the project at times, but I also need to be feeling mindless. And I'm going to explain what both of those things mean in today's video. So what is mindlessness then? Well, mindlessness is when you kind of go on a bit of autopilot and you aren't really fully concentrating on exactly what you're doing. You're allowing your mind to wander a little bit. And this can feel quite freeing, I think, and also quite soothing. I think it comes into play when you're doing something really repetitive. So for me, when I'm doing the ladder stitch, I'm not thinking too much about what I'm doing, I'm just stitching away. So this aspect of my Happy Memories quilt is a really mindless aspect for me. I find it really relaxing. I don't have to think too much at all about what I'm doing. I'm just going with the flow, I'm creating, and as I see the blocks come together and the item grow, I get a real sense of satisfaction and just this really good warm feeling. And I know you'll know what I'm talking about because I'm sure you've experienced this many times yourself. Now, when we hear the term mindless or mindlessness, it can actually sound quite negative, as if it is a bad thing. It sounds like you are doing something without putting any thought or care into it, like you're being careless. But I actually don't see it that way at all. For me, when I'm doing something in a mindless way, I'm kind of zoning out. And by the way, I'm no expert on any of this at all. I'm just sharing my thoughts and feelings around this. But when I'm in a bit of a mindless state, it allows my mind to wander away from what I'm doing and to process thoughts and feelings about other aspects of my life. And that can be a really, really good thing. Sometimes it's when I get new ideas about things. And in this Happy Memories quilt, it's the repetitive tasks, so the ladder stitching, and as I'm doing here, the hand quilting. These tasks that I repeat over and over again as I'm working on this quilt are the tasks that allow my mind to wander and to think about other things. Now, as I mentioned before, with my Happy Memories quilt, I'm using a combination of techniques, so hand sewing, hand quilting, but also applique and embroidery. And on this Hexagon here, I have copied a vintage embroidery transfer of a little cottage, and I'm using some very luxurious hand-dyed silk threads to work on this piece. The threads were kindly gifted to me by Kelly of Lay Family Yarns, and I'll leave a link to her shop below. They make the most beautiful hand-dyed yarn, so definitely check that out. But I find this aspect of my quilt extremely mindful because it requires a lot of thought, and there are choices to make. Which stitches am I going to use? What colours am I going to use? What thread? How am I going to approach it? In what order? And also, when I'm looking at a little design like this, I'm daydreaming a little bit about the design and what the pretty cottage will look like, what it would be like in real life, and how I want it to look in my work. For me, all of those things, all of those thought processes are very mindful. I'm focused completely on the task that I'm doing, and all of my thoughts that I'm having are about that task. And that, for me, is what mindfulness is. And again, that is a very freeing process. It's really calming. And if things in real life are stressful, difficult, challenging, doing something like this can break that negative cycle that you might be having in life and help your mind to focus just on what is happening right here, right now. And that's a complete contrast to the mindless tasks that we mentioned before. This one puts all your focus and attention onto exactly what you're doing in that moment, and that again is very calming and very therapeutic. I really do find embroidery to be a great example of a mindful task, and other crafts like knitting and crochet, things that require you to follow a pattern closely and to count your stitches, it really brings you into the present moment and stops you thinking about anything else. There's so much to learn with embroidery as well, and that brings me really nicely onto the sponsor of today's video, and that is Skillshare. Now, as I mentioned, I really love embroidery, and what I really love about it is that there is always something new to learn, and I really want to experiment more with this. And that is why I was so happy to see many different embroidery classes over on Skillshare. I'm really interested in taking this class by Lauren Weber. It's called Stick and Stitch Embroidery, and it focuses on embellishing clothing with embroidery using the stick and stitch patches. As we head into the summer, I'm really hoping that having more time on my hands means that I can explore these classes a little bit more, and that it will really help to inform my own style of embroidery. Skillshare is the largest online learning platform with so many classes on a wide range of subjects, from knitting to crochet to quilting to photography, illustration, and so much more. So why not take a bit of time for yourself this summer? Prioritise the making and head over to Skillshare and have a go at some classes over there. I'm sure you'll find something that you really love. And if you use the link in the description box below, the first 500 people to do so will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So why not give it a go? Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. So back to our embroidery then. So I'm really enjoying working on this vintage embroidery transfer of the little cottage. And again, as I mentioned before, I find it so mindful to be really focused on this. It's so relaxing. If you haven't tried embroidery, I really urge you to give it a go. Other aspects of my Happy Memories quilt, which I find really mindful, are all of the choices, which designs to choose for the embroideries, which fabrics am I going to choose, just focusing on these little tasks, all of these little tasks that add up to become the big project, really help to distract my mind from things I might be worried about and just help me to feel good. I really recommend you start a project like this. I know so many people have after the first time that I showed this project a couple of years ago. But even just looking at little scraps of fabric and the detail in them, I just find to be a very soothing and mindful process. It just feels good. So find something that you really love. It may not be a project like this, just something else, whatever really speaks to you, and gather all of your bits and pieces together and put it in a box, in a sewing box, in a bag, whatever it may be, and have it there ready to pick up and put down whenever you can. By doing that, by putting everything in place and having it ready to start when you can, you are prioritising it. You're saying that this creating, this making is important. And don't feel guilty as well. That's something that's definitely easier said than done, but there might be a pile of washing up to do, but if you feel like you need a bit of relaxed time, then do that. Pick up your stitching. I think it's more important than washing up. Also, I think what really helps with mindfulness with a project is making sure that it is a subject matter that really speaks to you. So I've been in love with lily of the valley flowers for so long, and I've been trying to grow them for a few years in my garden, and I managed to do it. Last year I got my first flowers and they were actually some of them pink. So I wanted to put that into my Happy Memories quilt to always remind me of that moment. And I shared the video tutorial and the pattern over on Patreon, so no pressure at all, but if you were to join Patreon you would get access to that. You've got the whole back catalogue, and I actually shared quite a few things over there that are in this quilt. So the little cottage design and the sunbonnet Sue design, they're all over there, and also this strawberry thief William Morris design, I shared that at the beginning of this year. So creating him, he was a little memory from a lovely trip I had to Winterbourne House. I haven't put this block into my quilt yet, but I know when I do it will be so good because it will always remind me of that lovely day. I find working on applique designs to be just as mindful as the embroidery designs. There are different choices to make. Here I was doing needle turn applique, so it's thinking about the different shapes and how to layer them up and what order they need to go in, and turning the seam allowance under in a way that's going to create a smooth edge. All of those things just really help to keep me focused on the task. Now I find the backing of the blocks in this quilt, so the quilt as you go part of this quilt, to be the more mindless aspect of it. And it really is this combination of mindful and mindless that just makes this project flow for me. My brain is concentrating and focused on the mindful aspects of it, and then it's allowed to relax at the mindless part of it, and this balance between the two just makes this project so enjoyable for me. Now in the past I used to be really focused on the end goal when I was making something. That is what it was all about. It was all about the finished product and having that done and then moving on to the next thing. But once I discovered slowing down and creating in this very slow, methodical, mindful way, all of that changed for me, and now my focus is very much on what I am doing, whether that's in a mindful way or a mindless way. Both of those combined are what's important to me, because that's what gives me a feeling of calmness. That is what reduces any stress and anxiety, not the finished product. For me, the making itself is what is most important. This Happy Memories quilt takes inspiration from subject matters that make me happy. For example, one of my favourite books from being a child, The Secret Garden. I did an embroidery about that. That is on YouTube if you wanted to check that out. So having subject matters like this in this quilt just create such a lovely feeling, transports me to a happy time, and the fabrics I've chosen as well have images on them that just make me happy. So if you can start a project that brings all of those things for you, then it will very much be a happy project, I'm sure. Finally, I just want to show you some of these fabrics I've been collecting. They are vintage, probably now, but they are Cathkidston fabrics from many years ago. You can't buy them new anymore, but I've been collecting them, and I'm going to use some of them in my quilt going forward, probably just one hexagon of each of these. All of the hexagons are backed with Liberty in this quilt, but I have been putting some Cathkidston in because, again, it's something else that just makes me really happy. I love Cathkidston designs because they are inspired by vintage designs, and it's just something that I love. So let me know in the comments what you think about this subject, and tell me what are the projects that are really mindful or mindless for you, and what sort of combination do you like? I'd love to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for supporting me, and I'll see you really soon in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.